Welcome to the TEOCO podcast, where we discuss the intersection of telecom, technology, and innovation. Today's topic is how service providers can leverage blockchain technology to help improve many of their business processes. Our guest is Jacob Howell, TEOCO's Global Director for Machine Learning, Innovation, and Implementation. Welcome, Jacob, and thanks for joining me today.
Hey, thanks, Barb. I'm looking forward to discussing with you some of the things that we've been looking at within our innovation group. So I'm happy to have this conversation.
Yeah, it's such an interesting topic. Frankly, it's a topic, though, that's been in the news for some time, especially as it relates to cryptocurrency. That's kind of what most people think of it as. But, now I understand that blockchain is really moving beyond the likes of Bitcoin. So can you explain for newbies like myself sort of what blockchain is and how it first came about?
Sure. Yeah. Blockchain or distributed ledger technology, it's a technology that's been around for nearly 30 years now, but it's only recently gained more of a mainstream recognition and more traction within our industry. And it is more than just cryptocurrency. The idea for blockchain came out of an article written in the Journal of Cryptography back in 1991. And two researchers, Stuart Haber and Scott Stornetta, were exploring how to ensure the documents were not being modified as they were being shared between different parties.
Man, it's kind of crazy to think that this technology actually goes back 30 years. I think of it as so cutting edge. Was this all conceptual at the time, or did their paper actually outline all the nuts and bolts way back in '91?
Yeah, they were outlining most of the nuts and bolts, and they struck on a couple of key concepts that in later became blockchain technology that we know today. The first of those key concepts was this idea of being able to link different documents together. They call these documents or records blocks. And each of those blocks could be linked together using cryptography. They were each given a unique fingerprint, and then those fingerprints were persisted down throughout the rest of the chain. Another key concept that they struck on was keeping a record of all the transactions, all the records that were added to the chain on a distributed ledger, and that ledger was then put on a peer-to-peer network to further increase its security and prevent people from being able to tamper with those chains. And then the last feature came maybe a year later. There was another gentleman, he's Satoshi Nakamoto, who's most well known for Bitcoin. He came up with this idea of proof of work, or what we now know as mining, where there was a consensus protocol that ensured that blocks that were being added to the blockchain by different nodes would be added in the proper sequence.
Wow. So seems a bit quite technical and rather theoretical. It's just kind of hard to get my head around a little bit. How did you? I mean, can you give me some examples or help explain a little bit in more common terms, I guess?
Yeah, sure. Here's a description that I like to share. Imagine you have a checking account and you want to make a purchase, and we'll call that checking account that you have your ledger. And then you have an accounting group also that you work with, and they also have copies of your ledger as well. So those accountants, we'll call them the miners. And since you have a copy of the ledger and all the accountants have a copy of your ledger, we can say that that is a distributed ledger. Now, let's say you're surfing the internet, working from home, and you find something that you want to purchase. Well, then you send out a reply all to all the accountants, informing them of your purchase request. So each of those accountants are then going to rush to be the first one to check your ledger and to make sure that you can afford it. And the first one that to be able to validate that you have sufficient funds, he's going to hit reply all and say, "Yep, you're able to make this purchase, and here's my reasoning behind that." Well, all the other miners are going to check that, and if the majority of them reach a consensus, then they'll go ahead and they'll approve that transaction, and that transaction will be added to the distributed ledger. Everybody will make a copy and add that to their copy of the ledger, and subsequently, that blockchain grows with that additional transaction. Now, this same concept, it works really well in industries where there's a lot of multi-step transactions, and where traceability and visibility is required. And that fits really well with the telecom industry today. In our industry, uh, carriers are continually, buying and selling services from each other. If you think about the life cycle of within the telecom industry, they're always constantly entering into contracts, buying services. There's quotes, there's orders, contracts, inventory, provisioning systems, billing systems, disputes and payments. All of those transactions can be linked together and placed into a single location using a technology like blockchain. And further, since blockchain has a lot of built-in security features, it's much easier for IT departments to accept and to implement a blockchain technology rather than a lot of access to a lot of one-off systems.
Okay, interesting. So it definitely seems like there are a lot of good reasons for telecom companies to be looking at this. Has there been much adoption or uptake so far?
Yeah, there is. There's been quite a bit of exploration into blockchain. A lot of companies are exploring, the ideal use case to go after. But it's generally we're pretty early in the adoption life cycle, I would say. But there is one area in uh, that a lot of carriers are starting to focus on, and that's the area of smart contracts.
Oh, well, how do these work? What do smart contracts do?
Yeah, so a smart contract it's a special type of block on a blockchain. It's basically, you can think of it as an application that runs on the blockchain.
Hmm.
And when certain criteria, certain information is passed to that application, then that application will self-execute. A good example that carriers are looking at is the area of service level agreement, monitoring and enforcement. So two carriers, they enter into an agreement, and there's a certain level of service that's built into that contract. Well, that smart contract is going to continually be watching, and then as soon as that service level you know dips below a certain threshold, then it'll auto execute, and it would send out immediate notification, as well as even assess whatever remedy has been written into that contract. For example, some carriers may have put money into an escrow account, and then if that service level agreement dips for some reason, they can pull that money automatically out of that escrow account. It all happens. The great thing about this is it all happens automatically, and doesn't require a lot of manual or human monitoring or intervention. It's all done automatically through blockchain.
Very cool. So, I mean, I can see that this could potentially really help, a carrier's bottom line with a lot of this automation and shorten timelines to get cash in hand. What are, and certainly with 5G, I can imagine as well, all the services and automation that's happening with that as well. So what are some other use cases that we might see smart contracts playing a role in?
Um, yeah, so smart contracts. Another use case that a lot of carriers are looking at is the area of intercarrier roaming contracts and settlements. Through a blockchain, carriers can post their contracts and their rates, and then other partners can sign up and agree to those through a smart contract. And with the blockchain, uh, those carriers, instead of having to go through a third-party clearinghouse, the blockchain can record and on a daily basis how much usage, voice and data usage is being consumed by those subscribers as they're roaming on the various partners' networks. All that information becomes available in real time, allowing the roaming partners to be able to settle up, mid-cycle. They don't have to wait until the end of the settlement period, and they can also, see in real time and negotiate in real time new rates and new terms and conditions, and even offer new services back and forth to each other's subscribers, all by virtue of the blockchain. That's just one use case. It's being also used with IoT devices. I know of one carrier that has used blockchain to connect IoT devices connected to a lot of uh, well heads in an oil field. And the blockchain, uh, that technology prevents hackers and other people trying to piggyback onto those devices or hijack those devices, and obtain network services that way. There's another use case I heard recently of a carrier in Africa. They wanted to upgrade, I think, about 25 of their cell sites from I think it's 4G to 5G, technology, and that's a pretty hefty investment. And they use blockchain then to tokenize those assets. Basically, what tokenization is taking a physical asset and breaking up into lots of smaller little virtual pieces. They then offered those tokenized assets in a kind of like a private initial offering to investors, and so investors were able to then you know, fund the upgrade of those cell sites through blockchain, and then once those cell sites had been upgraded, then the carrier was able to pay back those investors again in a virtual currency. And so that's a real novel way to leverage this new technology and ensure that everything is kept straight.
Interesting. So yeah, fascinating that we're finding ways of it's really out of the box thinking of new ways to do things that we've needed to do, but in a better, faster, more efficient, secure way. Interesting. So what are some of the other key drivers that are really sort of lighting a fire under carriers right now to be looking at blockchains and smart contracts?
So the main key driver is cost savings. I would say it's a way for them to be able to offer more services more quickly. So it increases their speed to market. And because blockchain, it's virtual and it's built in the cloud, it makes it much easier for customers to interact and with them and buy and sell services. One example I can think of is a carrier who's installed a high capacity circuit at a sporting event, sporting location like a football stadium. And typically, when those circuits were installed, a customer would have to commit to like a 12-month minimum commitment in order to pay for those services. Well, with blockchain technology now, instead of locking customers into those long-term contracts, customers can now sign up per event, and sign up just for what they need, the bandwidth that they need, and not be locked into those long-term commitments. Other drivers are of its real-time nature. So now people can see in real time the status of their contracts and how much usage they're consuming or their customers have utilized on their networks. And ultimately, it reduces the amount of cost that carriers have to incur. So instead of having to support a lot of staff to man these types of operations, a lot of these functions can be virtualized and can be automated, and thereby reducing a lot of the manual costs and making it their existing services and new services a lot more profitable than they had been in the past.
Right. So how does an operator go about creating one? Do they need an army of blockchain specialists to make this happen? Or I mean, you mentioned that they'll one of the benefits, really key benefits, is helping to reduce some of the manual labor required from some of these other processes, old school style. So um, what what does an operator do to kind of kick things off and get things started down this path?
Yeah, there are a lot of things to consider when you're building a smart contract, taking that physical paper agreement and instantiating that into code. They really are quite complex uh, beast. I've read through my terms and conditions with my wireless service provider, and I've read MSAs and contracts on behalf of our clients, and it is a challenge. There's some ways to get around that. We use computer vision and machine learning, artificial intelligence to and robotic process automation to read through those contracts and extract the key billing elements and rates and terms and conditions and put them into reference tables that our smart contracts can then utilize. That's one approach. Um, Another approach that and I personally advocate is taking this as an opportunity to really rethink how smart contracts are you know will operate with the physical world. And what I found to be most beneficial is agreeing to some standardization. Have a standard way that services will be established and that how they were going to be billed, and then also a standard way in how disputes will be resolved. If you can create a standard framework where customers can submit their disputes and have the smart contract or another smart contract linked to the original contract uh, to be able to interact automatically with those customers and have a certain framework designed where the customers can resolve those issues themselves. Makes it a really neat approach to implementing smart contracts.
So what about the cost, though? Is there, you have to pay all these miners. Is there much expense involved or any hardware or tools, special tools that you need?
No, basically all you really need is an internet connection. So and then you'll also need public and private keys in order to be able to contact and communicate with different blocks and other parties on that blockchain. There are some blockchain technologies that are open source, like Corda, and so one could download Corda onto their desktop and get connected within an afternoon. Where the real expense and difficulty lies is integrating the various APIs like Sonata to interface with your back office and OSS systems, and then determining what information you want to pass back and forth to that blockchain. There's also some challenges involved in interfacing with different blockchain technologies. I mentioned Corda. Ethereum is another one. There's also a few others out there, but Ethereum and Corda are probably the two big ones within the technologies that are being used within our industry. And so there may be some work required to build interfaces to exchange information between the different distributed ledger technologies, and again between the different OSS and BSS systems within your business.
So, um, do you think that what's going to be the driver behind all this in terms of moving carriers toward down this path? Is it going to be 5G? Is it going to be security? I know that 5G itself is it's very dynamic, and they have big ecosystems with many partners and complex service agreements. Do you think that to me, this seems like a good fit? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think 5G is an excellent fit for blockchain technology. As you know, there are 5G allows for network slicing, and with blockchain, you can further segregate different types of traffic and communications, between the different slices, and even within the same slice, you can keep things, separated. Certain information passed on one blockchain versus a different blockchain. Another area, and probably the area where I see the most benefit, is in the area of the infrastructure of 5G. If you think about the future, there's going to be thousands of more small cell sites that will be required in order to support 5G, and ensuring that it's ultra low latency, ensuring the network slices, and all the benefits that are being proposed for 5G. Now, uh, these small cell sites are popping up all over the place. They're showing up on telephone poles, on power poles, on light poles, street signs, sides of buildings, all over the place. And everywhere that they're being installed, there really is no common way of managing that. Every jurisdiction has its own unique building codes and construction requirements, design requirements. Further, all the different suppliers of these cell sites have different ways that they manage the ordering, the provisioning, the inventory, and ultimately the billing of those small cell sites. And so this is where blockchain can really benefit carriers, because with blockchain, then instead of having to manage all these different systems and all these different multi-step processes manually, blockchain can pull that information all together from all those different places and link it together in one central location, making it much easier for the carriers, the suppliers, and the buyers of these small cell sites to manage.
So is this something that TEOCO has been exploring? Are we using blockchain technology today on behalf of any of our service provider customers?
Yes, we are, in trials, looking at a number of different things in partnership with our customers. We can't go into much detail about that information right now, but I look forward to being able to sharing on a future podcast or in a future blog article about some of the use cases that we've accomplished with our customers.
Absolutely. This is interesting stuff. So thank you, Jacob, for your time today. Excellent discussion. I hope our listeners enjoyed our conversation as well. And if so, please be sure to share with your friends and coworkers. And also follow TEOCO on LinkedIn and Twitter to get updates on future podcasts and, of course, other exciting news. If you have any questions for Jacob or any topics that you'd like to hear about in the future, please send us an email to podcast@teoco.com. And for full access to our library of topics, please be sure to visit teoco.com, or you can find us on your favorite podcast platform to download more. From all of us at TEOCO, thanks for joining, and until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and stay informed.